Now, talks between U.S. and Ukrainian officials in Saudi Arabia this morning have now reportedly ended. Yesterday, the U.S. team met with Russian officials to discuss a maritime ceasefire across the Black Sea. For more on this, I'm joined by CBS News White House reporter Willie James Inman. Hey there, good morning, Willie. We're expecting the U.S. and Russia to release this joint statement hours ago. Why the delay?
Hey there, Errol. Good to see you this Tuesday morning. That's right. We expected that statement at 4 a.m. Local time, 11 a.m. in Moscow, and that never materialized. But officials are essentially calling these conversations between the U.S. and the Russians in Saudi Arabia very useful. But really, there's just nothing to share yet because the Russians are looking over, taking notes, of course, looking over this conversations that happened in Saudi Arabia and coming perhaps to some type of decision. Basically, they have to work out this maritime ceasefire deal in the Black Sea. Of course, as you mentioned, that would involve a part adding on to that limited ceasefire that has already been agreed to by the Russian and Ukrainian leaders. I'll also point out that Mike Walls on Face the Nation on Sunday said an aerial infrastructure ceasefire went into effect immediately after the conversation between President Trump and President Putin of Russia. So details still being worked out. Both sides in this case optimistic that some type of agreement can come about, and perhaps we'll see that statement sometime later, Errol.
And Willie, I want to ask you about some of the mass firings that we've been reporting on the past few weeks, because the Trump administration yesterday asked the Supreme Court to pause a lower court decision which requires 6 agencies to reinstate more than 16,000 federal workers who were given the boot. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's right. Those probationary employees were perhaps to be reinstated following that lower court order. But the Trump administration is saying, look, you can't come in between the executive branch and its ability to make decisions about its personnel. That's essentially what they're arguing in this situation here, asking the Supreme Court to intervene to overturn this lower court order that, as you mentioned, would affect some 16,000 workers at the Veterans Affairs Department, U.S. Department of Agriculture, Defense, Energy, Interior, and Treasury, to be exact. All of those government agencies where these probationary workers who have been on the job for about a year or two would have been reinstated according to this order. But the Supreme Court now, of course, has a case before it. It's not the first case to come before the Supreme Court in the Trump administration. And I'll also point out that there are at least 100 different cases challenging the president's executive authority and what the president has started to do in his second term here, Errol. So lots to see here, but we'll have to wait and see as to what the Supreme Court decides in this case affecting some 16,000 probationary employees.
Yes,
Errol.
so many people's jobs on the line with that. All right, Willie, thank you very much.